Hi, I'm Dr. Dan Ratner. Today I'm joined by Carrie, who has been suffering from an initial hamstring injury that led to surgery and subsequent back pain, brain fog, numbness, and multiple other symptoms. Today we are going to do our first session of my mind-body consultations, and we'll be concentrating on the emotions column. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below. And finally, you can reserve your place in one of my seminars or purchase any of my mind-body guides, also known as the PDFs, at www.crushingdoubt.org. Check out our website for our latest promotions and opportunities. Now, without further ado, here is my conversation with Carrie. Hi, Carrie. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Especially in the first session, I like to say this. It takes incredible bravery to be here and just talk this over and let people see what the process is like. So thank you for doing that. But the thing that I often say to people is, after this point, we got to forget about everybody else. It's just me and you here. We're doing the work of the columns, and I want to get you what you need. So welcome.
Yes, thank you, Dan. I appreciate your strategy and your time.
Well, it's
and
my
your
pleasure.
Dedication.
Thank you so much. So what we're doing today, at least as we're going to start out, is what you see I always do in the videos. We're going to start off on the emotions column, but I want to tell you, this is your time. So do you have something to write with? I just want to make sure you do.
I do,
Okay.
yeah.
So we're going to make notes about the mind-body map, these three different columns: emotions, doubt, and power. And we may skip around some. You might say something and I'll say, Carrie, you know what? That feels to me like a power column thing. Let's just jot down a note there, so when we get to the power column session, we'll do it. So if we bounce around a little bit, we're just getting things organized. With that in mind, we're going to start in on the emotions column. So you answered my pre-questionnaire that I give to people. It told me about, and that tells me about symptom life. It tells me about, family history and some things like that, just so I have a basic idea and we're not starting from scratch when we're talking about these things. So I have those notes with me. Sometimes during the session, I might say to you, hold on, I want to actually jot something down because I have an idea that's helping to get me more organized for how I can help you. So if I do that, just I'm increasingly doing that. In the earlier videos, I didn't do that, so you didn't see that. But what I want to do now is to start off with how you are thinking about the emotions column. So remember, in the emotions column, we are trying to develop, I would say, 6 to 12 themes. And that's mostly what we're going to do today. But the first step is to identify the broad areas of your life where you have emotional experience that, in your experience, has led to symptoms. So let's start there. With what you wrote me, can you tell me anything about how you're thinking about where we might start, major themes of your life?
Yeah, I feel like the major theme has really been to get out of the situation that my family was in, and that I grew up just right above the poverty line. And it was really important for me to not continue that cycle, as well as I didn't have anyone who graduated from college. So I wanted to make sure I could do that. And this started at a very young age. I remember thinking about it when I was 8. So that's kind of where I started, like the pushing and like making sure that I could achieve and make a better life for myself and get out of the poverty cycle. And then also my family, there's a lot of back trauma, like generational trauma there too, that I saw and experienced and came out in the parenting, as well as so like the income, and then the mental health. Like everybody on my mom's side had something going on with their mental health that was rather debilitating. And that went anywhere from like being severely on the autism spectrum to like barely functioning, to too much anxiety of not even functioning. So that was like the life that was around me as a child. So I knew that I didn't want any of that. I wanted to be a successful individual. I wanted to have a job. I wanted to have a normal life, like the lives I was seeing outside of my family. So I think like that set the groundwork for for my emotional world.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I just want to say, I am noting 3 major broad areas that are themes that are in development, is how I would describe it. And I want to say them back to you to make sure that I have them right, because you got to remember, I don't have the answers. You do,
Right.
but I can help organize it. So one is, right now I have it written down as like poverty trauma. Something about the way that all felt to you, which understandably would have been very hard. We're going to get specific though about how. But right now we have the broad focus. I'm sure you've seen me say this. We start off with the broad, then we get specific.
Yeah.
Right? Go ahead. Were you going to say something about that?
Oh no, I was just gonna say I'm sorry. It's garbage day, so I'm sure you can hear the garbage trucks going by.
I couldn't hear much at all. So this is interesting. Eventually, we're going to work with your power column, where the garbage truck will come by, and you'll feel that you have every right to be here, whether a garbage truck is there or not. So we'll work on that. That's power column work. So hold tight. So you've got this poverty theme.
Mm-hmm.
You've got generational trauma.
Yeah.
You've got mental health history in the family.
Yeah.
So all 3 of these things color your experience of yourself and the world. And we need to just get those spelled out. So this is a good start. But do you feel like I got the 3 broad themes right? Are we starting to build in the right direction?
Yeah, I feel like those 3 things have really just made me an anxious person from childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And probably even before I was born.
Okay. Sometimes when I'm talking to people about this, I jump a little bit ahead because it's an empathy response. I can't just stay hyper logical and just keep organizing these themes. Sometimes I feel like I need to say something of comfort, because or of encouragement. This idea of yourself as kind of super anxious, that's a part of your identity that I want to encourage you can change dramatically. If we use these columns right, especially power column stuff, I can sense there's a lot of power column work that we're going to do.
Exactly. There is a ton there. And I think that's where I've been missing with all the other work that I've done, is like I haven't made it to the point where I can address the power issues.
Right. So we might end up finding that this consultation has more focus on the power column than the other columns. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It should be what you want it to be. I'm going to help you kind of get each column organized enough so that you get something good out of each column. But in the end, I want to encourage you, however you think you are isn't how you have to be. With new understanding, things can be different. And you have been really anxious your whole life. And that's really not fun. I know you know that, but I'm just saying it empathically.
Yeah, and actually I've used it. I feel like I've used it to a superpower to get a lot done, like to get me through college, to get me through like competitive running, and to just continue to put myself out there. So I feel like it's almost like a superpower. And then when I became symptomatic, it became like a poison.
It's a really interesting way of putting it, and I think you're right, that sometimes these things can be superpowers that are very motivating and can get us far in life, but then the symptoms hit, and suddenly they're not working the same way.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, so I'm noting that as a power column thing that we're going to get to, but I did just want to say we can do some major things about that, and I know that's part of why you're here, so we'll get into that. Are there other broad topics of the emotional aspect of your living that are kind of dominant features of your life?
I would just say like a little bit of being that my family has been kind of the way it was. Like I feel like I've always tried to merge towards what other people are doing. And that even includes like my spouse, and like taking kind of like a step back from like where they're at and trying to always like catch up to them. So I'd say it's just like constant catch up that
Okay.
I've been doing my whole life.
Now, this is an instance where I understand what you're saying, but I feel like we need to get even broader about it before I can zoom in on what does this actually mean. So with catching up, what is the broad perspective that you're bringing to this? And I'm going to give you some examples so you can kind of be guided a little bit. It could be that you're saying, I'm trying to catch up because I never felt I was good enough, or I'm trying to catch up because everybody else knows better than me, or I'm trying to catch up because other people didn't come from a family that had as much, trauma floating around in it. So I have to trust them more. I don't know what it is, but did anything that I say fit with what you know about this?
I feel like all three of them fit pretty well, and maybe it's just even like searching for some sort of normalcy. I feel like
what I just nailed it.
Didn't come from was normal. So what is normal, and how do people act in this normal world? Because I knew what I had was not normal at all.
So you just nailed it.
Yeah, and how do I even interact with people that have a different background and then don't understand? So then I know that they totally don't understand. So then just like you kind of cut off that portion of your life and you don't even want to share it. Because you know that people won't understand or get it, or just move on really quickly because they don't want to talk about that part of you.
Right. You just nailed it though. And I knew that there was something broader, trying to catch up to people was like, that's one of those in between places where it's not broad enough and it's also not specific enough. So it's not a well-defined enough theme. I'm not saying that critically, but when I asked you about it, you were able to tell me what that is more in broader terms. So now we have the broad part. You were searching for some sort of normalcy, how to act normal.
Right.
And so that experience right there is the kind of emotional experience that could lead to symptoms. Let's say you're in a social situation and you're thinking, I don't feel normal,
Right.
Boom. That could be the theme that could lead to an onset or an uptick in a symptom. Because, of course, when we're dealing with the emotions column, that's what we're dealing with, onsets and upticks.
Right.
So good. We haven't gotten into the specifics of any of these themes yet, but we've got 4 going already. Is there any other area of your life that you can think of? I will help draw them out if you can't. But is there any other major area that you think is, this is another major sphere of my emotional life?
Yeah, I do feel like there's one more, and that's more like, how do I be unique, and how do I get seen and heard and valued? I'm
writing this down because
I'm always like searching for ways to do that. Like, what are my talents? What are my gifts? Like, and how can I bring that out and use it? And then when I do feel like found those things, like, how do I help others like trust me and believe in me and listen to me? Because
really good work. But here's what I'm thinking. As is often the case, I'm just going to tell you how I'm thinking about things so that we can find our way in this. I heard potentially multiple themes in there.
Yeah.
There was all great stuff. Let's see if we can get them separated out a bit so that we've got the broad topics organized, and then we go get specific. So you said, how do I get seen and heard and valued? First question I had is, are those separate themes? Being seen is to be noticed. Being heard is to be understood. And being valued is to be valued. It's said exactly right. So are those 3 separate themes?
I feel like the one that has the most weight is the value.
Okay.
And I think the other ones are actually I know how to do them. It's not comfortable for me, but I think I know how to do those 2. But then the value part is just kind of...
Okay, but I still want to ask, Did it feel like a major part of your emotional experience? Let's start with being seen. Being seen is about getting some understandable wished for attention. Did you feel like you were attended to?
Yeah, no.
Okay. So I'm going to write this down as a separate theme.
Okay.
Not feeling attended to or seen. Okay. Now let's work with how do I get heard?
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel understood? Have you felt understood in your life?
No.
Okay.
No.
I have not felt understood. I hope you don't mind my taking these notes, but they really are helpful in just really getting it down. And actually, the other thing is I can then send you these later, which is nice.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's see if we can get the value theme a little bit more rounded out. How have you not felt valued? It could be that you would say to me, I haven't felt valued in any way. Or I haven't felt valued around the things that are most important to me. I always get valued for the wrong things. Or I don't know what it looks like, but what's the value theme here?
Yeah, I'd say a lot of times when I've spoken out about my values, I get a lot of rebuttal back as far as why I shouldn't have those values, or that I should value something else or someone else or a different situation other than what I'm currently valuing. And I can think of times in adulthood, and I can think of times when I was a child that popped up.
Okay. Sorry, my earpiece popped out there, so I wasn't hearing you as well. I was like, she's gotten very silent, but because of me. So I wanna clarify something here. It sounds like part of the experience has been that you've been challenged to not have your values, basically.
Yeah, or been told that they're secondary to what's going on in the family or what's going on in the situation. That's not the top priority. We have a bigger crisis going on.
Okay. One thing I want to clarify, though, this is all gathering information, because as I build out these themes for you, the more information I have, the better these themes will be. And I want them to be really, really good.
Right.
It sounds to me, from what you're saying, that you've always known what your values are. It's not been a struggle to know what your values are. You've known what they are. You just don't feel like they've ever been in good alignment or put in a position of primacy. Is that right?
Yeah. I couldn't fit them into that normal world so much as easy as what I thought it would.
Yeah. Okay. Now, you did ask one other question that it was really interesting. You said it was like one sentence and it had 4 themes in it, potentially, which is brilliant. One question that you said was, what are my gifts? Now, this may fold into one of these other themes. It might be that, if I can show my gifts, that's how I would be seen. It could be that's how I'd be understood. That's how my values would be understood as important.
Mm-hmm.
But it could be its own thing altogether. And so I wanted to find out more about that. What do you see as your gifts? And how do they play out in your life?
Well, I would say we've moved around quite a bit, which has really gifted me in seeing a lot of different workplaces and how they work and the different dynamics. And so what I was trying to do at my last job was really try to bring that in, because everyone that I had worked with was there 20 years or more. And so I'm like, hey, I have fresh eyes. I have the ability to see things differently than a lot of people in the room. And then it wasn't received very well, or they had to think about it and then it would come back. And I'm like, wait a second, that's what I had been trying to nudge you guys towards that. Yeah. And I feel like that's the same way with a lot of personal relationships too, is I'll see things totally different. And sometimes I won't say anything because maybe it won't work out that way, and maybe that won't be the decision later on. But as that decision time comes closer and closer, and it looks like we're moving towards the direction they want to move, where I have a different idea, then I'm like, hey, stop. And then it's like, whoa, well, why didn't you say something way back here? And I'm like, well, it didn't really matter until we got up to the decision point.
Right. Oh man. I can feel the weight of all that though. You know, how much you're kind of stuck in your head with all these great ideas and viewpoints that are just, they're kind of getting shut off by your expectation that they won't be accepted or they won't be seen, or somebody might, you know, take them as their own idea even. And then you're like, hey, I was the one who said that.
Yeah.
So yeah. I wrote down two things, and I want you to validate for me or disconfirm, either way, if this fits with kind of a part of your emotional experience. I wrote down this: my talents and unique viewpoint are not appreciated. Does that fit? Does that resonate for you?
Yeah, I would say that that's been one of my frustration burners.
Yes. Okay. So this is its own theme. Now, I also heard this one. It's something about silence. I feel like you have been silenced in some capacities. Does that feel correct to you?
Yeah, I would say it's more, I feel like I'm not confident in what I have to say because I always feel behind, right? Like I always feel like behind my peers a lot of the time. And so it's like, am I to the point where I can say something and it is of value and it is correct
yes.
to share this?
Okay, so I wrote down two different things. And some of these we might end up merging into once we understand it, we might merge them into a theme. But partly I'm the reason I'm doing this is because this is then something you can do on your own.
Right.
You know, which is the goal of all of this.
Correct.
Give you the tools so that each column is a stronger tool for you to use. So I hear two things that you said. I'm phrasing it this way: I've been silenced and kind of knocked out of a confident standpoint by my interactions with other people, by my experiences with other people.
Right.
And then the other one that I wanted to put down as its own theme, because you've said it twice, and I think that is often a sign, this is its own thing. Okay. Right. So feeling behind your peers. Now this is interesting. I wonder about something. Does this fit with the poverty theme? Like, is this related in your mind to feeling lesser than your peers because of the poverty thing, or is it just its own thing where you felt behind? And by the way, it could also relate to the mental health history in the family. Like, it has overlap with some of these themes, so I'm just trying to place it.
Yeah, I feel like it's connected to a whole bunch of stuff. Like, I feel like it is connected to the mental health. I feel like it is connected to the income poverty.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it as its own theme for now, because we don't know where it fits. It relates to things, but it seems like it's its own thing. Okay, so right now we have 10 themes going right now. Don't feel that's a bad thing. That's actually a good thing. We have lots of information. I'll help you get this condensed if we need to, but also 10 is, that's in the wheelhouse of what we're looking for. Okay. What other themes are there? And this could be in relation to being a mother. It could be in relation to being a wife. It could be in relation to job-related things. It could be in relation to your exercise regimen and how important that's been to you. We want to, when we're developing these emotional themes, we want to leave no stone unturned in terms of the major things.
Yeah. What else? I just don't look at my notes here.
By the way, Carrie, if you feel like, I don't know, I can just bring up a topic and explore it, and we can pull a theme out of it if it's
Yeah,
there.
let's go.
You want to do that?
Yep.
Okay, so why don't we start with, you being a mother, since it's a big deal to have kids.
Yeah.
Is there a major theme that you would say emerges when you think about your experience of being a mother or your experience with your kids?
I feel like it's been a lot of trying to shield them from things I've experienced and trying to, again, that normal family life. Like I really wanted that for them. So I, researched a ton on communication with my children, like discipline. And I worked in a field where like that was part of my job, is to know these things about childhood and development and helping parent and nutrition with kids. So I knew a lot of things just from the line of work I was in. So it was very easy to apply it with my own kids. But I think I went into that line of work so that I knew how to do it when I became a parent. So that my kids didn't have to repeat a lot of the things that I experienced, because I also was a overweight child too. So I wanted to make sure, and I didn't have good nutrition at home. So that was like one of the things that I wanted to eradicate for them, was the inability to have good nutrition as a child. So like that, is a weight, right? And then I knew like probably the discipline that I received was not going to resulted in a lot of shame, and it resulted in a lot of self-doubt. So I knew that like that's not something that I wanted for my kids. So I researched a lot and read a lot to see how should that really look. So that's another way. Like I have constant pressure on myself to overcome these hurdles because I knew I didn't have them.
Right. So I wanna now I'm gonna integrate some things here that I just, in the way that I'm hearing them, but I need your help to know if this feels right. If it doesn't feel right, it's not going to be useful, because it has to be stuff that makes sense to you. I was hearing this as a theme of its own that's basically something along the lines of pressure to be a good mom. But then, and I put down, I need to shield my kids from what I got or give them things I didn't get. That's more specific stuff. But my question here is this its own theme, or is this the way that generational trauma as a theme is manifesting? Is that the generational trauma theme?
Yeah, I think it's a generational trauma.
That's the way I was hearing it.
It's the weight on my shoulders to break this.
Okay.
Break so many things.
Yes. So I would say the broad theme is generational trauma and the need to break the cycle. Right?
Yeah. And I felt the weight, right? Because I was one of the only people. Well, I was like the only person in my family that wasn't struggling with mental health as a child or as an adolescent. Well, which I was, but I just didn't know that I had anxiety, right?
Right. So listen, we've just now, in a way, almost completed a full theme here. But I'm going to say it back to you to make sure that we have the right idea. I would say one of your main themes here that can lead to symptoms, and is just important to know about for you, because the emotional themes list is just something important to know for you, whether it's causing symptoms or not, is generational trauma and the need to break the cycle. And underneath that, there's pressure to be a good mom. I need to shield my kids from what I got and shouldn't have gotten, or I need to give them things I didn't get that they should have. Okay. To me, that's a pretty complete theme. Is there anything that feels like it's missing from that theme that doesn't really nail it? Because the way this should feel when we really nail a theme is completely correct. That captures that essence of me in that realm of my life.
Yeah. One of the things that I really wanted to shield them from was really, like the teasing and like the being looked down upon with their peers. So that I feel like is another, like, it's almost like me living it out through them. Like I don't want them to be hurt because they don't have maybe the trendiest clothes, or I don't want them to be hurt because their family, the reason why they don't have a car is because they're too poor, or the reason why they don't have as much mobility as their friends is because of the money's
Right.
tight, or exposed to things because the money's tight.
Right. Okay, so now that brings me to the poverty theme. So, and which I think it's related, but it's different enough. It's articulated enough that it needs to be its own theme. And the reason for that is you could be having a symptom and be trying to figure out, well, okay, why is that? And it could be because it relates to all of that generational trauma and that pressure you have to stop that being passed down.
Yeah.
But it also could get very specific. And with poverty, that's a broad enough theme by itself. That's that's part of your generational trauma. You've had other generational traumas, right? So it's not just that. Because like teasing, for example, sure, it might have related to poverty in some way, but teasing, and feeling not valued as a person, whether through poverty or not, is its own thing.
Right.
So now let's go ahead.
Blamed it on that as a child. Like I always think I blamed it on I think that's what my mom told me, is like she got teased a lot when she was a kid because she was poor. And so then I think I just made the connection, like, okay, I'm getting teased just because
okay,
I'm stuck in trauma.
I have a question for go ahead.
That's not what I thought as a child, but I think at a subconscious level, that's what I was connecting.
Okay, so I have a question for you. This is not always something that I'll do when we're doing emotions column work, but sometimes it feels like it's very important for us to get the themes right to get a certain question answered. And the question that I have for you is, if I were to say to you that teasing can happen with poverty, certainly, but more to the point, teasing happens when people don't feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
So poverty is one form of why you might not feel good about yourself. But does that feel like you can feel that you can hear how I'd be right about that really when it comes down to it is about, do you feel good about yourself?
Yeah. I can definitely feel that as an adult. Like I don't think I would have grasped it as a child.
Sure. So I have a question then, because that could be its own theme. The just a general self-esteem picture. Like, do you feel good about yourself? And that's such a tough question. And you could in certain areas, but not in others. But if there are major areas where you don't, I would say we want to start developing its own theme.
Yeah. And I would say like I felt I had to work at it, and my husband helped me to work on it too during college because he noticed it too. And I wasn't really getting as much. There was a few times where I had a couple professors really come down hard on me. And so like we kind of worked together to work that out. So I'd say like we had been working on that like in our 20s, and then I felt pretty good by my 30s. I felt pretty comfortable. I would still doubt, I think everybody doubts stuff.
Sure.
And felt uncomfortable or not as equipped as what they wanted to be in certain situations, but I was pretty okay with who I was. And then I feel like I was really good with who I was when I was like accomplishing things, when I was running and then like getting recognized, because I was not an athlete as a child at all. And I actually had a fifth grade experience where we had to run the mile, which I hate that they still make kids run the mile.
I hate that. Yeah.
I hate those presidential awards. I think it's really crappy, and I think it really turns kids off to physical activity.
Yeah, they should call it presidential hazing.
I know, right? It's terrible. And I had watched my daughter do it just recently, and I was just like, oh my gosh.
Me too. I hated it.
90% of the kids were walking it, so it was all good. And I was one of those kids that walked it, and I was the last one in, and I really was shamed by both my teacher and the gym teacher. So anyway, for me to become like a runner and to be really good and to be placing in races and that sort of thing was like see, like, I'm good, like, I'm good. I'm not this like person, this lazy person that you told me I was, like, and I felt really good, right? Because I had achieved something that was not seen as something that I should achieve or even was within my realm to achieve.
Right.
So I felt really good about that. Like, I'm like, I overcame a lot. And I think like that's how I felt in my 30s until I became symptomatic. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, like everything that I worked so hard to achieve, like, was very much stripped away. Like, I lost the ability to run. I lost, the ability to work. I lost the ability to really parent well, like I had developed over the years. And it was just like crushing to have all that work and then just taken away, and then to find out it was like a brain thing, which then brought me back to like all this mental health stuff that my family experienced. So that was, you're not so much different than them, you haven't really overcame. And it was almost like my mom was almost like, see, you're not so different than us, like,
oh boy,
like,
oh, ouch.
that's how I felt it. I don't know if that's the way she meant for it to be, but
I just added 3 different things from what you said.
I know I have a lot. I feel like I have so much, and maybe that's why I've been here so long.
But when I think about it, everybody's got so much. When you hear it repeated back to yourself, you can sometimes feel like, whoa, I have a lot. But
right,
you're making total sense. This is not different than, it's interesting because one of your themes is, oh, maybe I'm not normal, right?
Exactly.
And it's happening right here in the session.
Right.
And I want to say to you, no, Carrie, this is totally normal. This really is. I mean, everybody is individual enough that nothing's normal at the same time, meaning everything's unique. But this is normal, and this is developing normal, and your themes are not, like, I can see your wheels turning. You're kind of saying to yourself, maybe I'm a mess. Maybe I have too many themes. Maybe I.
Right, exactly.
It's not true. There's nothing wrong with you. This is normal. So I'll keep working on that with you. This is more power column work. We'll get to that. But I put down here, I expanded on this mental health history in the family as a theme. That's the general thing. But I started to get more specific about it because what I'm hearing is there's a fear that there is something wrong with me, and it will turn out I'm no different than them.
Right. I didn't escape it like I thought I did. That's really what has crossed my mind so many times.
So I'm just writing this down so that I can then send it to you. It's funny. I tell people to write it down in the columns. I end up doing a lot of the writing myself. But we have generational trauma more defined. We have mental health history more defined. I added in that there's like a self-esteem and shame theme that I could see just leading to symptoms all by itself and having a very broad application. There's also self-value tied to accomplishments.
Mm-hmm.
The meaning of accomplishments, that feels like its own theme. So we're going to develop all of these. I want to circle back now, though, with the time we have left and see if we can get some of these themes nailed down a little bit more. Before we do that, though, one last thing. Is there any other major area that we haven't covered? Being a wife, for example, your career path. I feel like accomplishments, we got to the exercise thing and how important that is. That's in there somewhere.
Yeah, I think, well, it's also like the symptoms really affected like the ability for me to do things with my family. So I felt like very much like an outsider, and I've had a lot of like guilt about not showing up in my marriage like I want to, and for this to like burden the marriage and just to put an extra like strain on it has been heavy for me, and it's made me feel not great as a person. Like, gosh, I should have been able to prevent this. I should have like been able to stick up for myself. I should have, acted differently in the relationship and protected myself more. as far as the amount of things that I was doing and stretching myself thin. Like I should have done that. So there's like a lot of shoulding, I would say.
Yeah. I would say that there's a theme of self-criticism in here, right?
Yeah, like yeah, like there's a strong theme of prevention for me. Like that's kind of my line of work, and so I thought diet and exercise could prevent anything, and I'm finding out that that's not true because.
Well, I'm curious what you'll think, and this is your area of expertise, not mine. But I would say that where it fits with my area of expertise is this is the sense that however you go about your diet and nutrition, there's also the component of how do you feel about it all,
right?
And actually, how you feel alters your metabolism in certain ways. So it goes both ways.
Right.
how you're feeling can affect what's going on in your body. But what you're saying and what I'm saying in response to you is that how you're dealing with your diet and nutrition can lead to feelings about the self, and then that has a life of its own.
Yeah, and I would say I've seen that a lot with clients, and it feeds the other way too. If you don't feel good emotionally, like your diet's gonna not be great either.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we have a pretty good list of the broad themes. I just wanted to check one last time. Is there anything we're missing? And we can always add.
Right.
But just right now, anything that occurs to you that we're missing?
No, I'd feel like those are like the broader things. Especially, I've done 3 years of therapy before this, pretty routinely, so I feel like I have them down. I know what I kind of come to therapy with every time.
Right. The one distinction I want to make, though, about the emotions column versus therapy is this is a way of honing them into these little pockets of knowledge that you can rely on at different moments. It kind of separates everything out. Therapy is obviously fantastic. As a therapist, I'm not going to argue therapy is not good. But sometimes it can kind of be too general and too all a mashup. The emotions column theme allows us to separate it out. So if you're having a symptom or you're having even just an emotional experience, which is a symptom, by the way, and it relates to generational trauma and the pressure that you have to break that cycle, boom, you're right on it. It's almost like built-in therapy. Now you have your themes so you can connect to, you may not need the therapist as much or at all,
right?
Where you can just say, it's this. Yes. Yep. Okay. I remember this. Yes. So as an example, we've got this poverty theme that's only in broad form. We don't have the specifics yet down. Now I want to get into the specifics. We won't be able to do this with all the themes, but I want to show you how to do it. And we already did it with generational trauma. We did it with mental health history, where we got to that there's a fear that there's something wrong with you and that it'll turn out you're no different than them and you can't escape it. That's a really well-defined theme as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
That gives you a place to look when you have symptoms. Is this about the fact that I'm feeling like, oh, I'm just like my family and I never escaped? Boom, you got it. So with poverty, let's get this more articulated. What did poverty mean to you? How did it alter your view of you or the world?
I feel like there is like I know of 2 situations and I'm trying to put them into words. I feel like it was going to set me apart from the other kids in my class, or maybe they didn't want to.
This is going to sound like a ridiculous question at first, but I think it's really important. Did it feel unfair?
I felt more embarrassing than anything.
Okay, so unfairness wasn't the major component to it. More embarrassing.
No, it was more embarrassing. Like I wasn't going to be able to fit in because I didn't have a nice house to have sleepovers at, or I didn't have a car big enough to bring friends around, or like I had a junky car. So my family had a junky car. So anytime they pulled up, like there's going to be this like junker of a car dropping me off at the high school, which I would rather walk in the freezing rain. You know, I would walk like 20, 30 below. I'm not even kidding. I live in Minnesota. So I'd walk and I'd freeze. But I'm like, that's better than getting dropped off in a rusty car. Like, it's kind of ridiculous, but image matters a lot when you're a teenager.
Of course it does. It makes perfect sense. But you probably saw me responding like it hurt me to hear it. But I wanted to highlight that there's a particular reason it hurt me to hear it that may be different than what you're thinking. It's easy to empathize with a high schooler feeling the pain of feeling like they stick out because they don't have the things they need and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that would suck just by itself. But the pain that I was feeling, that I think is much more connected to a kind of power column empathy for you, like a deeper one, is that I hate that you thought that meant you were lesser.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with whether you're as good as anybody else. Nothing.
Yeah. And I say it was the same like for the athletic abilities, like in the community that I lived in, no matter what your income was, if you were a good athlete, there was a lot of attention to you from
right. So
anywhere from newspaper to teachers to awards. And I was none of that. Like I had no athletic ability. So it was like I couldn't shine. I couldn't fit in because I didn't have just like a normal car coming to drop me off. I couldn't fit in because I didn't have any athletic abilities. My academics were kind of like normal. Like I couldn't stand out even in that. Like even though I tried hard, like I couldn't stand out academically either. So it was like I was just kind of like, no matter what I try, or I try hard to blend in, like nothing really works.
That's a heavy load to bear. So I'm going to say this. I wrote down some things about not fitting in and athletic ability because I feel like when I was talking about self-value tied to accomplishments, I think we just got it sharper. We got it into sharper focus right there. So I put that in that theme. The idea of not fitting in, the athletic ability being valued in your community and you feeling like you didn't have it, which actually turns out to not be the case.
Right.
But then in the poverty theme, here is what I wrote. I wrote poverty as a thing. This is just a note. It's not even in a sentence form yet. We can work on that. But poverty is a thing that would set me apart because it was so embarrassing. I actually thought I was lesser than.
Mm-hmm.
Really.
Right.
You actually did.
Yeah.
And maybe you still carry that. In fact, I would say more than maybe. I think it's in there.
I do still carry that, especially because my husband has a PhD. So we hung around a lot of people who were achieving like PhD level. And like that wasn't even, I felt like that wasn't even in my wheelhouse. So when I went into that community of grad students, I felt like I didn't really belong. Like I was working a job and I wasn't going towards this higher degree. But for me personally meant that you were higher on the pedestal if you had a PhD or if you had.
So I just want to say that to me feels like a reenactment, a reliving of what you felt when you'd pull up to school in a junky car. It was like you always feel like you never fit in. You're never good enough.
Right.
Right? I'm going to put down the never good enough theme, which fits with self-esteem and shame. And right now we have probably about maybe 14 right now.
Okay.
That's not
more like 20.
No, to you it feels like you're so overwhelming and you have so much.
Right.
This is how you are, Carrie. You criticize yourself as if you're not normal. And listen, in a way, there is no normal. We're all very different than each other. But there's nothing wrong with you. And I'm going to fight like hell until you know that.
Right.
And the columns work can really move the needle on this much better especially when we get to the power column again, because
Mm-hmm.
this whole idea that you are lesser than other people is complete garbage. I understand the things that were fed into your experience that made you think that,
Mm-hmm.
but by the time we're done with your columns work, whether at the end of the consultation or more likely as we go forward with things and keep, consulting as needed,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to let you go on feeling that way. I won't do it.
Yeah.
We have to help you feel that what I know about the symptoms to be true. Your symptoms don't want you feeling this way anymore. We're doing
Right.
power column work already here, but I can't help it. Your symptoms want you to know that you are not lesser than.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, your body is mad at the world, but also at you for saying that you're lesser than. It doesn't
Right.
want to take that anymore. I say this all the time. The body is the most empathic entity we have.
It's true.
It's telling you, Carrie, you have to stop not valuing yourself as a complete equal to everybody else. That doesn't mean you'll instantly start doing that, but we're on the right path.
Right.
So we've developed some of these themes. We need to develop them more just to get them in good shape. But as you said, you've had a number of years of therapy. You're pretty self-aware. You actually were even when you were younger. You were really taking in a lot of stuff. So this is more just a point of organization that can help you when there's an onset or an uptick in a symptom. That's what the emotions column is. At the same time, this emotions column work has opened up a very clear idea in my mind of how your other columns are going to be functioning, especially that power column.
Right.
It's so big. It's almost like you've always known what's been bothering you. You've had it pinpointed, but you've never felt there's anything you can actually do about it. Maybe you have in some degree, but the power column is really about how can you do something about this that is a big change,
Right.
at least inside.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to help you live differently about it. So let's do this, Carrie. What I want to do is I'm going to send you the notes that I made on this stuff. And then I want you to work on it. I want you to use especially those 3 themes that we developed really well, the generational trauma, the poverty, and the mental health history. I want you then to use that to take these other pieces of information, and we might find that we merge them into one theme, or we might even have to expand them out into 2. It doesn't matter. There is no right number here.
Okay.
And then I want you to try to get the broad picture and then the specifics in the same way we did with the other 3. That's what you'll be doing in the emotions column work. Whether you do it this week or not doesn't matter. It's just this is the work of the emotions column, and you'll do that, and I'll help you with it.
Okay.
Next week when we meet, we're going to get into the doubt column. We're going to start assessing where's your doubt column at. And there's a reason I do the columns in this order.
Right.
It's the order that I got better in. But also it's the order I got better in because it's the order that we go in.
Oh.
We kind of need these things to go in this format. So first we have to understand our emotions some, enough to have a sense that really this does relate to emotional things. Then we need to master doubt. And once we've done those 2 things, then we can work in the power column much more effectively.
Yeah.
Which I think is the main one for you.
I 100% agree.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're off to a good start.
Yeah.
And once again, thank you so much for your generosity in doing this with me in a way that people can see. I know that's not easy to do. You did great, even if I know you well enough to know you will criticize yourself. But once we get to that power column enough, maybe you won't so much.
All right.
All right, Carrie. So I will see you next week, and we'll continue. We're off to a good start. I'm going to send you these notes, and we can either do the emotions column work over this week, or we can get to it as the weeks go by. But I just want you to have a roadmap for what we're doing in each column, and I think we've got a good one here.
Yeah. I think that's where I get stuck because I I have like probably 100 tools, and I don't know, like, I feel like I don't know if I haven't used them in depth enough, or if I need a different tool, more tools than 100.
Well, listen, when we get to action steps in that fourth session, I'm going to try to help you get organized about that. Like within yourself, a sense of what should you be using and how to use it, and a real sense of direction on things, because it's hard. You guys all have too much information and not enough information at the same time, as I often say.
Right.
So we'll get there. Try to be patient with me as we build this, but this is a very good start.
Yeah. Do you send me a time then for next week, or how does
we're going to do the same time if it works for you. If it doesn't work for you, we'll touch base, but yes, I think if we can just do this time each week for the 3 more weeks.
Yep.
We'll get in the time then.
Perfect.
Okay, Carrie, thanks so much, and I'll see you next week.
All right. See you then. Bye.
Okay, bye. Well, I found that to be a very powerful session, and even though Carrie tends to be critical of herself, and she'll say, I wasn't organized enough, or there was too much, I didn't see it that way at all, and I don't think any of the viewers will. What we saw was someone with a lot of very distinct and important emotional themes. One of the things that especially struck me here is how much work we're going to do in the power column. Sometimes when I sit down with a particular person, I can say, oh boy, okay, the doubt column is where the bulk of this work is going to be. And everybody's got doubts. This podcast and show is called Crushing Doubt for a reason. Doubt is so important. But you could see how much, and this really broke my heart to see, she can sometimes actually believe she's not as worthy as other people. That hurts my heart to even think about. And one thing I love about the power column work that we're going to do is that it can help her to find a path towards truly valuing herself with that core narrative in place. So as I was going through the emotions column, I couldn't help but be peeking into the power column with Carrie. And that we're going to see what more there is to come. The doubt column is also going to reveal stuff about that. And I look forward to continuing my work with her. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and we'll get back to you personally.